There's a city in western Japan, a port town called Sasebo. About 250,000 people live there. It's a quiet place, a naval base, some fishing boats, mountains behind it, and the sea in front. In 2004, a 12-year-old girl in Sasebo lured a classmate into a restroom and slit her throat with a box cutter. Japan was shaken to its core. It was the worst crime of its kind anyone could remember. And it happened in Sasebo. 10 years later, almost to the day, another girl in Sasebo killed another classmate. The same city. 2 generations of schoolgirls, and this time, what happened inside that apartment was, in some ways, even harder to explain. This is the story of the murder of Aiwa Matsuo. It was a Saturday, July 26, 2014. Aiwa Matsuo was 15 years old, a first-year student at a high school in Sasebo. She told her family that afternoon that she was going out to see some friends. She left the house and never came back. By that evening, her family was worried. She hadn't called, she hadn't replied to messages. They reported her missing to the police. The next morning, Sunday, July 27th, officers traced messages on Aiwa's phone. Those messages showed that she had been invited to the apartment of a female classmate. The address was in Sasebo. Police went there. When they gained entry, they found Aiwa on the bed. She was dead. Her head had been severed from her body. Her left hand had also been severed. The perpetrator, a 15-year-old girl, also a first-year student at the same school, was there when police arrived. She confessed on the spot. She was arrested the same morning, July 27, 2014. Japan had been stunned by Sasebo once. Now the country had to try to understand it again. The confession was detailed, and what it described was not a crime of impulse. Girl A, as she would be known under Japan's juvenile protection laws, which shield the identity of underage offenders, told investigators that she had made the decision to kill someone approximately a week before she actually did it. She had thought about it. She had prepared. In the days before July 26th, she went to stores and bought the tools she planned to use, a hammer and a cord. She purchased them separately, deliberately. Police later noted that she had also visited the library in the period before the crime, where she reportedly researched Japanese laws concerning juvenile offenders. She was, it seems, already thinking about what would happen afterward. Then she reached out to Aiwa. She sent messages, friendly ones, inviting her classmate to come over. Aiwa accepted. On the afternoon of July 26th, Aiwa arrived at the apartment. At some point after that, Girl A struck her from behind, hitting her on the head multiple times with the hammer. When Aiwa was incapacitated, she strangled her with the cord until she was dead. Then she carried out what she had said she wanted to do. She dismembered the body, severing Aiwa's head and her left hand. When investigators asked her why, she said she had wanted to kill someone. She said she wanted to dissect a dead body. She told them she had no particular animosity toward Aiwa Matsuo. She hadn't chosen Aiwa out of hatred or jealousy or rivalry. She chose her because she needed a victim. And Aiwa, it seems, was simply someone who agreed to come over. It also emerged that Girl A had, at some point before the murder, practiced. Investigators believe she had dissected a small animal, reportedly a cat, in preparation for what she intended to do to a human being. She was 15 years old. To understand how a 15-year-old arrives at this, and I want to be honest that understanding is not the same as explaining it away, you have to go back about a year. Girl A had grown up in a relatively well-off family in Sasebo. By all accounts, she was a capable student, good grades, good at sports. She was close to her mother. In October 2013, her mother died of cancer. That death, by most accounts, was the beginning of something coming undone. Her mother had been the emotional center of the household and Girl A's anchor. When she was gone, things deteriorated. Then, in January 2014, less than 3 months after her mother's death, her father remarried. How Girl A received that news is not fully on the record, but what followed suggests it was not well. In March 2014, Girl A attacked her father with a metal baseball bat. He was injured. The details of what preceded that attack are not publicly known, but it was serious enough that after it happened, her father made a decision. He would get her her own apartment and she would live there alone. He was, by his own later account, deeply worried about her. But his solution was distance, and so at 15 she moved into that apartment by herself, alone. What happened to her thinking in those months, between her mother's death, her father's remarriage, the bat attack, and the murder of Aiwa Matsuo, is not entirely clear. But what investigators and psychiatrists found was that during this period she had developed or deepened what can only be described as an obsession with death and dissection. It's said that she was reading extensively about criminal cases, about anatomy, about the mechanics of death. She reportedly had a growing fixation on what it would feel like to end a life and to examine a body afterward. None of this was hidden in the way you might expect. Several people in her life had seen warning signs. The problem was what happened, or rather what didn't happen, with those warnings. This is where the case becomes something more than a crime story. Because the warning was there, it was documented. A psychiatrist who had examined Girl A, I want to be careful here because the exact circumstances of this examination have not been fully published, reportedly contacted a child consultation center in Nagasaki Prefecture before the murder. The warning, as it has been described in Japanese media, was explicit. If she is left as she is, she could kill someone. That warning, it appears, did not result in any intervention before July 26, 2014. What should have happened next is a question Japan is still sitting with. After her arrest, Girl A underwent formal psychological and psychiatric evaluation ordered by the family court. The findings, as summarized in legal proceedings, described a young woman with an autistic disorder. She was assessed as having an extreme lack of empathy, an inability to perceive other human beings as fully real as having their own inner lives, their own pain. Clinicians described her as resembling, in some respects, what is sometimes called a primary psychopath, someone for whom the suffering of others registers almost nothing, not as callousness exactly, but as a fundamental gap in perception. The evaluation also concluded that incarcerating her in an adult criminal facility would worsen her condition and make rehabilitation effectively impossible. Based on all of this, the family court, Japan's juvenile justice system handles offenders under 18, decided not to send the case to criminal prosecution. Instead, they ordered Girl A committed to a medical reformatory, a secure treatment facility for juveniles with serious psychiatric conditions. She was not criminally convicted. She was treated as a patient in need of intensive intervention. For many people in Japan, and certainly for Aiwa Matsuo's family, that outcome was almost impossible to accept. And then that October, just a few months after the trial, Girl A's father was found dead at his home in Sasebo. He was 53 years old. He had died by suicide. He had, in the immediate aftermath of his daughter's crime, publicly apologized to the Matsuo family. And then he was gone too. Aiwa Matsuo had lost her life. Aiwa's family had lost her. And now this father, who had tried, however inadequately, to handle something far beyond what any parent is equipped for, was dead as well. The damage from that apartment radiated outward in ways that are still hard to fully see. One question that Japan found itself unable to avoid was this: what is the responsibility of a professional who believes a young person is going to hurt someone toward the people that young person might hurt? The psychiatrist had said the words, a document existed, nothing moved. And Aiwa Matsuo went to her classmate's apartment because her classmate seemed like a friend. It said, and this is interpretive rather than officially determined, that Girl A had no malice toward Aiwa in any conventional sense. She didn't hate her. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to experience something, and Aiwa was accessible. That indifference is, in its own way, more disturbing than hatred. Hatred at least acknowledges that the other person exists. In 2014, Japan amended its juvenile law, extending the maximum imprisonment term for juveniles under 18, in cases where a life sentence would otherwise apply, from 15 years to 20. It was part of a long conversation the country had been having about juvenile crime since the 1997 Kobe child murders, the 2003 Nagasaki kidnapping, and the 2004 Sasebo slashing. Each case pushed the law incrementally further. It's worth noting, though, that the overall rate of serious juvenile crime in Japan continued to fall during this same period. The cases that prompted reform were exceptional. That didn't make them less real. Sasebo in 2018 is a case about a specific crime, but it's also about everything around it. The spaces between people where something goes wrong and nobody quite catches it in time. A girl lost her mother. Her father made choices that left her alone in an apartment at 15, with whatever was growing in her mind. A psychiatrist issued a warning. The warning moved through an institutional channel and stopped, and a girl named Aiwa Matsuo sent a text saying she'd come over, because you do that for your classmates. There are no clean answers here. Juvenile crime cases in Japan are sealed, which means we will likely never have the full picture of what happened to Girl A in that reformatory, whether she was released or where she is now. That opacity is by design. The law is built around the possibility that young offenders can change and that they deserve some protection of identity when they do. Whether that balance is right is a question serious people disagree on. What we know is that Aiwa Matsuo was 15 years old. She liked her classmate enough to visit her apartment on a Saturday afternoon, and she didn't come home. That's the fact at the center of all of this. Not the law reform, not the psychiatric debates, not the question of what to do with a child who scares the professionals around her. A 15-year-old girl went to meet a friend and was murdered. If you've stayed with this story, I think you already understand why it matters to keep telling these cases. Not for spectacle, but because the systems around us are made of decisions, and those decisions have names. When the systems fail, real people bear the cost. Thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, I'd be grateful if you subscribed. There's a lot more to come.